G'day guys, before this podcast kicks off, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of you who have supported me on this journey on the first year of starting the Chip and Chase podcast. It's been a very long ride and I could not have enjoyed it more. There's been a lot of things I've learned along the way and we're going to continue to evolve and be better into next year. I'm sorry, it's been a bit quiet on the podcast and on the socials. As I mentioned sort of within the podcast itself, I think everybody's suffering from a bit of footy fatigue, especially myself. You know, I love the game. I'm a massive footy fan and I'm enjoying these Pacific Championships as I mentioned, but I am enjoying them as a fan. At the moment, I don't want to produce that content, especially if I cannot, find the creative juices to actually get some really enjoyable things out there for you guys. So I'm kicking my feet up for the rest of this year, having some time off, enjoying the footy we have left and getting ready for next season. Now, I do have a lot in plan for next season, so please do stick around for that. But once again, this is just a massive thank you to all of you who have supported me along the way. So stick around and thank you once again.
He looks to stand, now he runs, he produces a magic trick, he pulls out another one. This is incredible, this is ridiculous, this is 15 out of 10 of the incredible meter. What a player, what an entertainer. Give him the medal, give him the Dally M medal.
Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast, a very special episode of the podcast today. We are joined by an absolute legend of the rugby league content community and a great inspiration to myself in the show, the Rugby League Guru. Guru, mate, thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me. It's been a little bit of a journey for us, just quietly.
Hasn't it been? We've been sort of in contact since you started, and now here we are, 2024, and I'm rolling around into the deep end of it.
Yeah, how good. And fuck, it is a deep end, let me tell you.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to getting where you are, mate. Also joining us today, we have Kat producing at the back, so she'll chime in where you are. Kat, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Thanks. It's nice to have you in the studio and looking forward to the chat.
Pleasure to be here. So today, guys, essentially what we're going to be talking about is, I know there's the Pacific Championships going on at the moment. I think a lot of people are suffering from a bit of footy fatigue. It's a long season. I know a lot of people aren't tuning in, and to be honest, myself in the content creation space, it's getting a bit hard to do them. So I'm sitting back and enjoying the Pacific Championships, just watching as a fan and not as a content creator. So for this podcast, we're not going to be touching on them. There are a lot of great content creators out there, including the Guru and Bloke in a Bar, that are touching on them. So you can go find your measure for that. But we're going to be looking a little bit into the expansion side of things and touching on where we see the next expansion team being placed, where we'd like to see them placed, and some of the signings that you'd look to target as the club, whether it's the coach, the marquee players, young fellas, experienced heads, all sort of them. So I'll throw over to you, Guru. Where do you think, or where would you like to see the next expansion team?
Mate, I was lucky enough during the year to go over to Perth. We had the Dolphins playing the Roosters over there, and I'll be honest with you, getting on the plane going over there, I sort of thought, a rugby league team in Perth, we've done it before, I don't know about it. Man, when I was over there, I was so impressed with what's going on over there, and I walked away from Perth, arrived back in Sydney, and I was just completely convinced it was the place to go. It was, it really was incredible. There's, you go over there and you talk to the people that are working on the ground in Perth Rugby League, like, I think they said they've got 4 high schools over there that not only are they playing rugby league, it's a subject. So, like, they're going all in on it. And Perth is, I would say, just from looking at it and the people I was talking to, probably AFL is probably the dominant sport over there because they've got a team. But, mate, the night that I was there, and don't ask me who it was, I can't remember which AFL teams they were, but there was an AFL game and an NRL game. And the NRL game sold out when we were there that night. Like, there are so many rugby league nuts over there that are so keen for it. And even like being at that stadium, like the Dolphins have made a big play at Perth. So they've been on the ground there. South Sydney have done it as well. But mate, I reckon I would have seen every single jersey over there. Like being at the ground that night with the people interacting, how excited they were. Like it almost had like a Magic Round sort of feel to it, that everyone was just not so much like excited to have, the two teams there, but more so just excited about the game, which is sort of what the Magic Round sort of feel is. It's like a celebration of rugby league over there. And obviously, that's one night over the year where everyone comes together. But you've got a lot of like fly in, fly out people over there. A lot of Kiwis living over there as well. I think it's a space that we need to explore. And from a selfish sort of Sydney point of view, I love the time zone and how it works as well. I think it's unreal. Like when I was over there, I think the game was at like 5 p.m. or something, which was the main slot over here. Like it just works so well. It was a Friday afternoon. You could do the Saturday afternoon game. I don't know. I just feel like it ticks a lot of boxes. Like the flight's a bit of an issue, and you know what? When I was on the flight and I got off the flight, I went, oh, fuck, that was a pretty big knock. And I was lucky enough to be there for the Dolphins captain's run, and Wayne Bennett was doing an interview with people there, and they sort of said, oh, what about the travel? And I just loved Wayne's response. It was just, look, I'm an 80-year-old dude. If I can do it, these guys can do it. It's part of rugby league. The Warriors do it every single week. No one gives a shit about the Warriors doing it. We just cop that they have to do it. Like, I think that our game could live with it. I thought, when you look at professional sport around the world, the amount of travel they do and everything, realistically, rugby league fans and rugby league players have it pretty good. So I want it to be Perth. And to be honest with you, from talking to people there, like the spot we were in, there was a lot of political people there and whatnot, and they were essentially telling us it was done. It was 100% signed, sealed, delivered. So the last few weeks have been a little bit surprising how it's all played out for me. But I still think Perth is the best spot. I have a couple of issues with other spots. If it was to be another Queensland team, I honestly wouldn't have a huge issue with it. If it was to be a New Zealand team, I'd be completely fine with it. I think that going for another team in New Zealand wouldn't be a bad play just because of where New Zealand Rugby League is right now, and almost more importantly, where rugby union is at the moment. I think it's an opportunity where rugby union's a bit lower at the moment. Like it's been an absolute train wreck in Australia for a long time. New Zealand, from what I've gathered, isn't as strong as it has been previously right now. And the Warriors, obviously with Fisher Harris arriving and them doing well the last few years, I think it would be another good spot to grab there. I imagine we'll talk PNG soon, but yeah, I'm not huge on the PNG idea. I don't know. It just feels a bit odd to me.
Well, that's just it, mate. You mentioned that the people that you were talking to, the vibe that you got over there, it was essentially a done deal. What we were hearing in the media across everything, it was like the Western Bears, as it was going to be called, the Perth Bears, was a done deal. We were going to be getting that Perth team. We were going to get the Bears, their re-entrance into the comp. And then suddenly out of nowhere, we hear that their offer was substantially short. Yeah. And it just came out of nowhere. And earlier in this season, the PNG bid, we were hearing they were the team. They were the next team that was in it. And that was a done deal. So it's pretty crazy that these two next two most talked about teams, both essentially done deals, both have fallen through. Now we're hearing other bids out there, the South Island, the Kias or the Christchurch Kias as they're potentially going to be named. There's a market there. They're in for the bid. That is another option I'd like to explore. You mentioned that they're marketing the South Island and North Island, making a bit of a rivalry out of New Zealand there, and also branching into that market and trying to take away from rugby union, who's in a pretty sour state of affairs at the moment. So there's definitely a market there. I'm with you though, mate. I think Perth is the way to go. Just even beyond this, before expansion was even talked about, any game that we took over to Perth, they're always sold out. The fans are always out there in force. And yeah, travel, it can be an issue. As you said, the New Zealand Warriors have to do all the time. Melbourne has to do a bit of travel. Yeah, Perth's a bit further away from Melbourne, don't get me wrong. But if you want to play rugby league in Perth, yeah, you have to come, take and give. And I think it's definitely the market that I'd like to see expanded upon the most. Mate, if you were the coach, if you were the board, the organisation of a new Perth team, whether it's the Perth Bears, the Western Bears, whatever it is, who are you looking at as your coach? We'll start with the coach. Who are you looking at to coach? Of course, the Dolphins, they came into the league. They went and got the best coach of all time, Wayne Bennett. And, with their signings and whatnot, everyone thought it was going to be a tough few years or a tough first few years inception for the Dolphins. They exceeded all expectations. They were incredible. I think a lot of it comes down to having Wayne Bennett at the helm and him deciding who was going to be in that organisation, the heads that he wanted. Other Western Bears or any expansion team for that matter, are they in a position to get a Wayne Bennett or a Craig Bellamy, or are they going to have to go somewhere else, do you reckon, mate?
I think a Wayne Bennett you could get, and he would be my number one target. He really would be. And, you talk to, we've obviously done a bit with the Dolphins and whatnot. Like, I think people would probably be surprised by, and I say this with all due respect, like how little Wayne actually does on the football side of things. Like he is just a guy that's able to motivate fellas, and he's a guy that's able to motivate guys that, you know, you think are over the hill or aren't up to scratch. Like you have a look at that side that played the Roosters in round 1 last year. The entire backline was reserve graders. It was unwanted dudes. You know, Isako's now an automatic in the New Zealand side. You know, Jack Bostock just got Rookie of the Year. Like Hamiso was literally a bench guy in the Cowboys team. He's now, you know, one of the best outside backs in the world, who plays fullback at Clubland, centre in rep, and, you know, arguably the best centre in Repland. Like Wayne's ability to just pull guys together and just pull something out of nothing is just incredible. And I think he would be the absolute number one priority. I personally don't care how old he is. I think just having his presence is absolutely massive. And, you know, we've told a story, you know, I've spoken about on the podcast before, like there's been situations where when we're over in Perth, like the Dolphins took 19 dudes over there, right? Because, you know, the NRL gives them an allowance of X amount of people are allowed to go. Like, we will pay for X amount of people. They took 19 players. They took 2 social media people. They took assistant coaches. I think they ended up with a grand total of 25 people. 19 of them were players. They got there. I was there on the captain's run. TPJ pulled up a little bit sore. Weren't sure if he was going to play. Went to their hotel room that night, had dinner, woke up. Cody Nicarima had been sick as a dog all night. They're down to 18. TPJ got ruled out 2 hours before the game. So it all of a sudden meant that in that state, the Dolphins had a grand total of 17 guys who could actually pull on a jersey, going up against the Roosters. Like, the Roosters are leaving rep players out of their 17. They took them right down to the wire. And I remember just being there on the day just going, my God, like, this is going to be absolute carnage tonight. The Dolphins are going to get absolutely decked here. And just talking to the coaching stuff from before, they just went, nah, Wayne's got him calm. He's got him confident. They're okay. And I'm sitting there going, calm and confident. Who gives a like, you're going up against a kangaroo side over there. Like, and you watch them in the warm-up and just comparing the two sides and what there was, but just the calmness the Dolphins have off the back of Wayne. Like, you can't put a value on that sort of stuff. And I just don't think any other coaches have that, and nor should any other coaches have that. I think if you're going to bring in a new side, you would be wanting to get a Bennett, a Craig Bellamy, one of these guys. And it probably sounds rough out with the fellas, but I'm not overly convinced that a team could be all that successful without one of those great coaches. I'm really not. And you have a look at the Titans back in the day, like they started really well. But, I mean, the Titans have never really recovered. They went to a prelim final in year 2, I think it was, and they made the finals the year after. And then it has been a disaster for 10 years, realistically. Things are starting to look better up there at the Titans, but they still finished 13th last year. They're still, you know, not the most well-run club of all time. And the Dolphins could be like that in 10 years. I don't know. But I think to be able to be successful early, or even to just be relevant, I mean, like, the Dolphins haven't made the top 8, and we still call them a successful franchise because of where they started and where they've come from. But realistically, if you're another coach in the NRL and you don't make finals 2 years in a row, you're probably going to get the sack. That's the reality of how the NRL works. You look at, you've had 2 coaches sacked this year that made grand finals in the last 12 months, like within the last, you know, it's 2 years or whatever. I think if you are going to start with a new franchise, I think you need to find a way to go out and get one of these absolute gun coaches, because I just think if it starts poorly, it could be a train wreck for a long time.
Yeah, and we've seen expansion before in the NRL when they brought in a lot of sides. When the Super League split happened, we were having so many sides. As you mentioned, a lot of failed franchises from that era. It's more, if the NRL is to get this right, they do have to make sure that they're putting the interests of the clubs and the NRL at first. It's business number one, sure, but business isn't going to make a difference if this club is set up to fail. And to make sure it's not set up to fail, you need to go and get these coaches of Wayne Bennett. And the best part about Wayne Bennett, as you've mentioned, mate, he wants to. You mentioned he might come off a bit of a flog in the media, or just the way he deals with interviewers. He's not that person. He cares so deeply about the game of rugby league. And yeah, you mentioned it, mate. He would want the game to succeed. He would go to that franchise. And for me, I feel like he'd be up to that challenge as well. I think for Wayne Bennett, he's accomplished everything in our game. It's just a challenge of doing it, but it's also making sure this is off to a good start.
Yeah.
And with the Dolphins, maybe they are going to end up like the Titans, who had that great start and they go down. I don't get that vibe. I think the pieces that Wayne Bennett put in place at that club, Christian Wolf at the helm, he handpicked everyone that is there.
Yep.
And I think they're in a position that they will be set up for the future. And I have great confidence in that, which, keep in mind, as soon as they came in, I was one of those people saying they'll be lucky to scrape 3 wins and they will finish dead last. It's all over my face, egg all over my face, to be honest, because you can never doubt Wayne Bennett and you can never doubt the people that he puts into the positions he has. So I'm with you there. A Wayne Bennett, a Craig Bellamy as well, if you can manage to get a Craig Bellamy over there.
And that's something I would add too, like even if they're not the head coach, like an advisor role, have them in the building. Now, and you know what, if I was the head coach and I had Craig Bellamy as an advisor, I probably wouldn't feel great about myself. But I think you need that guy in the room to make it better. And there's been examples of that not working. The Tigers with Tim Sheens overlooking shit. But I think it's pretty evident that where Tim Sheens is at in his career is not where Wayne Bennett's at in his career. I think you need that experienced guy in the building and helping out. And it might be a little bit unorthodox, but I think you've got a very short window to make this successful. And if you miss it, it could be real dire straits.
100%, mate. And a lot of it comes down to connections and who you can get over to the club, not just in the organisation. But Wayne Bennett, he's been around the game so long. He has connections with almost everyone in the game, players and staff alike. He can get them over just by one call. I don't think any other coach or anyone who goes over to that new franchise is able to get the Bromwich boys, is able to get Felice Kafusi over to that franchise, to leave the best well-run club in the world at the time under arguably one of, if not the top 2 coaches of all time in Craig Bellamy. It's only Wayne Bennett who's able to get them. And you can look at how they've played and say they're not the standards they are at the Storm. That's not the reason Wayne Bennett bought them. He bought them for their leadership. He bought them for their experience. And if you just get any old coach in the building, is he going to have that pull to get those players over? Keep in mind, there was no marquee man that was signed for the Dolphins, and that was the big question mark that we all had. But the people that Wayne did get across the building, he knew he was getting the results from them. And if we are getting a new coach, can he have the pull to... If Wayne couldn't get a marquee signing, is somebody else going to be able to do it? We hear Brad Arthur's name tossed up for maybe the new job. Who is Brad Arthur going to be able to pull? With absolute respect to Brad Arthur, I think he's a fantastic coach, made a grand final a couple of years ago. Who is Brad Arthur going to be able to pull to a new franchise, especially over in Western Australia? It's not just in Brisbane, which is one of the biggest nurseries in the country. This is across the other side of the country. Who can Brad Arthur pull, or who can any other coach pull that Wayne Bennett can or Craig Bellamy can't? Yeah,
exactly right. And I think that, I think we also need to probably give a little bit of respect to Wayne, and I was one of them as well, so this goes for me too. Oh, they don't have a marquee player, they don't have that guy. I mean, they did. We just couldn't see it, So, I've got to give credit to Wayne, but once again, and with all due respect to Hamiso, and it goes for him and a lot of players throughout rugby league, I don't think Alan Langer is who he is if Wayne Bennett didn't be part of his career. I don't think Darren Lockyer is who he is. They still would have been very good players, but I think they'd be the all-time greats they are without the influence of Wayne Bennett. Would Hamiso be that guy if Brad Arthur was his coach? And it's not a Brad Arthur thing. It's a fucking insert any name here ever that's not Wayne Bennett. Would they be the same? And I have my serious question marks over that. I think that there was a lot of value in what the Dolphins have done as far as going for a lot of young guys. A lot of young guys they see with a lot of potential, and that side of it I find really exciting. But you need to balance it out with those older guys, which they did just incredibly well. And I just say, I was just having a look there. You have a look at the Dolphins. Season 1, they finished, I think, 12th or 13th or something like that. And we all said, fuck, really good effort. This year, they finished 10th, which is a good effort. And, I say it myself sometimes too. We sort of say, I don't think they'll beat the Titans. So the Titans finished 12th in their first season. They finished 13th the season after that. Season 3 and 4, they finished 3rd and 4th. For me, I hope I'm wrong, but I can't see a world where the Dolphins finish 3rd and 4th in season 3 and 4. So as incredible as it is where the Dolphins are at, and I personally think they're in a really good spot, history tells us, you could argue the Titans started potentially as good, if not maybe better, depending on how the next 2 seasons go for the Dolphins. So, and that was with John Cartwright. That wasn't with Wayne Bennett coming in and then leaving. It's going to be so intriguing to watch how it plays out. And I just wonder if the Dolphins were in year 5 of their existence, I wonder how the expansion argument would change with people. Because at the moment, we've got this shiny thing that's gone, it can be done. But you think about how many incredible things the Dolphins have had to do and had to get right, and how much history is already in that club. The sort of fan base they've already got there, the leagues club they've already got there, the foundations they've already got there. They've had to have a lot of things go their way and tick a lot of boxes. And they've had things go against them. Like Tom Gilbert's ran on the field 3 times or whatever. Tom Flegler's career's over. Like they've had a lot of things go against them as well, the Dolphins. But they've also had a lot of things go their way that, like, there's like, if Hamiso doesn't turn into a star, where are they at? If Isaiah Katoa doesn't come in and look like a 10-year halfback after 10 games, where are they at? You know, and could they have done that without Wayne? History tells us probably not. So yeah, it's going to be so intriguing to see how it all plays out with not only one new team, but with potentially 2, 3 new teams. Like I hope not, but I can't see a world where one of them isn't a complete and utter tyre fire.
No, and that's just it. And it depends where you look at what's classified as a successful franchise or a successful expansion or a failure. Do we consider the Titans a failure of a franchise or an expansion? Personally, I don't. I think they've added a lot to the league, and I love watching them play in their market of footy. But if you look at success, the newest teams in the comp, we're looking at the Dolphins, who we will write off. They've only been in the comp for 2 seasons. But before that's the Titans. They haven't won a comp since they've been introduced. I think then we've got the Warriors and maybe Cowboys 95 are the other 2 newest teams. Warriors haven't won a comp. A lot of, they're looking at a lot of market for New Zealand because, rightly so, at the moment, rugby league in New Zealand's at an all-time high. But in the end, can we really bring in another New Zealand team when we've got 20 years of history that this team hasn't worked? So it's a big question to ask there. It is going to be very intriguing to see where the Dolphins are at, as you said, by year 5. I think the expansion, it's obvious that it's going ahead, but I think they might be onto that as well. The higher-ups in the NRL, Peter V'landys, know that at the moment it's a success because of how good the Dolphins are going, and they want to keep this expansion thing going, get those teams in as soon as possible, because if in 1 or 2 years' time this Dolphins team plummets without Wayne Bennett, then is it going to really look like we can keep doing this? Yeah. So it's a question that needs to be asked.
And like even just having looked through the Titans, as a franchise. Well, they came in 2007. It's now 2024. So what's that? They've been in there for about 21 seasons, something like that. I just did a quick count. Like they've been in the bottom 4 teams, like 11 of those 21 years. Like, and I agree with you. They're not a failure of a franchise, but you also have a look at like some of the things the Titans have had go their way. Like the hardest thing to find in rugby league is a genuine halfback. Like over the last 21 years, they've had 6 Australian schoolboy halfbacks grow up in their backyard and just haven't been able to make it work. Been through numerous coaches, been through a lot of like off-field scandals and stuff and all that. Like even today, like you look at the situation, they're in a better spot, no doubt. But like, what's the number one conversation when you talk about the Titans? How do they fit all these guys? Like their roster management is a little bit all over the place. We're watching the Cowboys at the moment. One of the big talking points there is this 10-year deal with Tamalolo. They've gone down a similar path with a forward who, and it's not his fault. But, 3 months later, he does an ACL. He's got 9 years to go on that deal or whatever it is. Like, it's just, And I think you bring up a very valid point that I think V'landys and them are trying to rush it in whilst the Dolphins are still the shiny fucking Walt Disney story. It can be done. We can make this work. And I hope it does continue to work. We obviously work pretty closely with the Dolphins and a few things, and everything they've set up there is incredibly impressive. But it will just forever worry me when Wayne Bennett walks out of a building. I don't care if you're the Broncos, the Dragons, the Knights. Like all these teams go from winning premierships, top 4 teams, to really struggling. It's hard. And I do think that the Wayne Bennett leaving the Dolphins is a little bit different to other clubs. And we're actually talking to some of the Dolphins people the other day, and they said that Wayne sort of said to them, and Kat, remind me if you can remember the wording of this, but I think he said to the Dolphins, he said, every other club that's ever brought me here was to win a comp. I was brought to the Dolphins to set up for the future, and I think I've done that. And I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember verbatim, but it was the gist of he understood why he was in that club and what he needed to do for their future, but he didn't feel that pressure to win a premiership. in those first 2 years.
Which is where all these other clubs say, oh, Wayne came to our club and he fucked up our cap and he back front, like, he's trying to win your comp. That's what you brought him there to do. Like, you don't hear Dragons fans complain about that because they won their comp.
No.
South fans got very close to winning their comp. I think Newcastle Knights fans forget that he got them all the way to a prelim final, which, if you go look at that team list, shouldn't have made finals, let alone get to a prelim final. Like, this is what, I just thought it was interesting what Wayne said there, that, I leave most clubs after trying to win a comp and going all in, whereas this club, I haven't. The way we've done it is setting us up for the future. I thought it was really cool to think about.
100%. And as I said, I've already mentioned it, I do think that there's a massive difference between Wayne Bennett going to other clubs who are signing the best coach to win us a premiership, and then him going to this side and they've said, we need you to be the coach, but you can pick everyone. He has set this organisation up as if he was part of it from the very beginning. We also forget he took a year off rugby league. He didn't just leave the Rabbitohs, go straight there. Yeah. He took the entire year to set up this organisation, to build the foundations. And I think this club is what maybe has me in a bit of a different state to what the Titans are. Another big difference between where the Titans were, and again, not saying that they're a failure of an expansion or a franchise, but I reckon the squad that they started with, compared to what the Dolphins started with, I think the Titans had a far better squad, a far stronger squad from inception. The players that they had in their squad, the Scott Princes, the Preston Campbells, your Luke Baileys, all of them I thought were a lot better, or at least in the primes of their careers, as opposed to what Wayne was able to build with the Dolphins here. So maybe they only had that 4-year spell where the Titans were all in their prime and they could do that. And of course, they've fallen off there. This Dolphins team, they're young. I think they're going to continue to get better. And I hope they do. We all hope that for the sake of rugby league, for the sake of this franchise and, rugby league in Queensland, that they continue going this route and they continue being a force to be reckoned with and build that Brisbane rivalry. Whether or not we get another, here's a question I want to throw at you. The potential of country sides. So, of course, the City versus Country used to be, back in the day, one of the rep sides. A lot of people saw it as a preview into Origin and players that would get selected from there. I think there's so much talent in country rugby league, whether it's in New South Wales, Queensland, whatnot. Is there a way to field some sort of country side? I know the NRL does a lot of work where they take games out to, say, Tamworth and whatnot. Is there a way to make a side that's maybe a Queensland countryside and try and find those nurseries, or a New South Wales countryside and market around there? What's your thoughts on that?
I think there is. I don't know how you go about it. And to be honest with you, I'm probably the worst person to ask. I've lived in the city. I've never left the city. I don't have probably a good enough understanding of how it all works. Like, as far as, I know like my junior league and areas around Sydney. But when it comes to country footy, I'm really not that experienced. Like, I'd love to hear Timmy Williams' thoughts on that, because he lives and breathes that sort of thing. His family always has. So I would just open by saying I might be the worst person to ask that, to be completely honest with you. But I think it can work. I think it definitely can work. I think that, and you know what, probably 3 years ago I would have said, no, that's crazy. You can't have from different to blah, blah, blah. But I think you're starting to see it more and more in world sport. I think it can work. I think it's, as long as you've got the right people in there, it can work. And I kind of look at the Canberra Raiders. That's kind of what the Raiders are. They don't have the big time, out and out, 10 out of 10, Australian superstar players, like Hudson Young's in there at the moment. But outside of that, I've spoken to guys at the Raiders. Like, you speak to other clubs, we want to sign superstars. The Raiders we want to sign country guys who are going to fit in with our culture and who are going to play tough football. And every year, Raiders will finish bottom 4. They don't, because they play a tough brand of footy that suits their environment. And I think if you were to lean into that, you could make it work. 100%. I really do.
Well, I feel like if we look at Isaiah Yeo, he's a Dubbo boy. That's Dubbo, you're not getting a massive amount of players, but you find these gems. We War for Braden Trindle, I couldn't tell you any other We War players. It's a tiny little town in the country. I'm a country boy, so I always want to see that. But our markets like Tamworth, big enough to house an entire franchise? Yeah. Probably not. So that's where you need to find and milk from different areas. And I think it'd be something that I'd love to see. Maybe it's just because I'm a country lad wanting to see it happen, but I think there's so much talent that just slips through the cracks in country rugby league, and we get a few gems in there, as I said, with your Isaiah Yeos and whatnot. But I want to see a lot more. So I think it's definitely an area that I'd like to see expand upon. But for me, definitely Perth is where I want to see the next franchise. Mate, let's throw it over to, we've talked where we want to see it, who we think it'll be, and what coach you'd target. What are some of the players you'd target? Now, I know you're like your young fellas. You could be anything, as you call them. Who are some of the young guys you would look to target right now? You know, we're not talking salary cap. We're not talking off contract. But if you were to start a franchise, who are some of the guys that you'd have your eye on as a coach?
So I've got a list of guys here that I would sort of go after. But, you know, some of them have already debuted. Some of them are in the early parts of their career. So by the time you're doing this, they might be 23, 24, 25, which I think by rugby league standards is still pretty young. I've got a number of young guys I think would be really good gets. But my probably number one priority if I was starting a new side, I would be trying to move heaven and earth to get Max Plath to my side. Especially if I was a Queensland-based side, I would be trying to get Plath straight away. He's a guy that can cover lock. I think he'll be one of the best locks in rugby league very soon. Tough as nails. He just brings that right attitude to your footy side. He can cover hooker. He can cover in the halves as well. It was only 18 months ago he was a halfback. Now playing lock. I think he'll be an Origin star very soon. He's a marketable sort of guy too. I've done some content with him, and you can sort of sometimes when you do content with these guys, you can tell the ones that'll make it work and the ones that are just doing it for the sake of it and don't really want to be a part of it. Plath, he's a guy that you could really utilise. He'd be the young guy that I would target. There's a lot of other fellas. I think that Fletcher Sharp is another one I'd love to get my paws on. Playing wing at the moment, doing tremendous things. It's not his best position. No. Fullback is his best position. You know well and truly being up there from Newcastle.
Yeah, so Fletcher's Cessnock boy, so right around the corner from me, currently living in the Curry area.
Yeah.
I'm like you, kept eyes on Fletcher since he was coming through the grades and just watched him play, just going down to local footy and just seeing him. He is an absolute gun. I was so excited to see him come into the grade this year. And yeah, as you said, fullback is by far his best position.
Yep.
He's not getting it at the Knights, but he's also a Cessnock boy. He's got that country sort of vibe to him as well. Is he going to want to go to the bright lights of Sydney, or is he going to go to a club that can offer him something different? So he's another person. Yeah, Fletcher Sharp I'd be looking to sign as a new franchise 100%.
And he's one of those guys, he's got a bit of a unique look to him. He's a relatable guy for a lot of people, and I think if you go into a new franchise, you need to have those sort of guys that people can get around. The other one that I love, and I sort of look back to when the Titans came in and they signed Preston Campbell, smallest guy in the league, but people love that story. My boy Jai Gray, I reckon he'd be such a good get. I think the kid is a genuine star. I don't think he's been given opportunity, but I think you put him in a franchise where he knows, you know, he's the 5'8" or he's the fullback or whatever it might be. I think he's a guy that people would really get around as well. There'd be, you know, a lot of marketing things you could do around Jai as well. I love him. One that I'm huge on is this Casey McLean. I said to you pre-show, like we're doing our could be anything stuff at the start of the year. We're doing that in February. Like I'm watching in January Casey show up. I'm watching him physically at Jersey Flag trials thinking, okay, I can probably wait a year until we talk about Casey McLean as a CBA. I get to the end of the year and he's playing for New Zealand. And you're just going, how the hell did that? I literally watched you 8 months ago at a Jersey Flag trial. The McLean brothers, I think they'd be two really good I know that the Penrith, they're very high on them over there. I think they'd be great gets for your outside backs. There's a couple of guys at Sharkies, Cade Dykes, Ison, these guys that are in a system that's very strong, that's got a lot of depth. Are they going to get opportunities? Probably not. They're the guys I'd be going after. Guys, you look around the league and go, okay, similar to what Wayne did with Hammer, you know, gun, but is the opportunity there? I can give them an opportunity to put my arm around them, bring them in. I think those boys would be great targets. Over at the Warriors, they've probably got too many good young forwards than they need, realistically. It's all good to have all the ones in the world, but you can't play them all because you can't have that much of an inexperienced pack. There'd be guys there that I'd be sort of going after. There's also guys in their reserve grades I'd be going after. I think another really interesting one, and let's say it's in 3 years' time. By this point, this kid will be 21. Galvin. To think in 3 years' time, that kid will be 21, and I already think he's one of the better 5'8" in the game. And that's only after his first year. Like we've seen many guys before, like Tim Smiths and whatnot come to mind, that it doesn't pan out after that. But I don't know, Galvin to me has just got something special to him. And, you know, even if you look at Galvin, if he's, you know, locked in at the Tigers and he's all good, that probably means Latu Fainu doesn't have a team at the moment. He's another young guy that I would love to see target. And one that I'll cop crap for. That's fair, whatever. I still think Siwa Wong, if I could get my hands on him, I am so confident he's still going to be a star. he's one that I would really go heavy at.
Mate, I think Siwa's still got so much left off. We keep forgetting, in any other club, he probably walks into it. He's playing for, as you mentioned, a Roosters side that are leaving rep players out of the side. Yeah. Like, they've got depth coming out the wazoo. Angus Crichton came back to the best form I've ever seen, and at the start of the season, he was playing reserve grade. So, yes, it might leave Siwa without a squad, but that's at the Roosters, one of the strongest sides across the board. I think he walks into any other organisation, and a new franchise, again, spitballing here, if we're still thinking Wayne Bennett is the coach or Craig Bellamy is the coach, can you imagine these talented players under him? I think Siwa is one of the first names I'd be looking to get over at such a young age, and his ability, he's unreal. Mate, some of the other guys that I've sort of been looking at in the lower grades. Mitch Henderson's one that I really like. Played halfback 5'8" for the Raiders and Flag and New South Wales Cup this year. It was unreal. Of course, Raiders had fantastic seasons in their Flag and New South Wales Cup, going one game short of the grand final in both grades. He was playing essentially in both of them. He's now departed the club. Of course, Ethan Sanders coming across there. It's almost like his spot into first grade, his path into first grade has almost been blocked now with Adam Cook as well, the New South Wales Cup Player of the Year there. Now with Ethan Sanders, Jamal Fogarty, Kale Weeks, all these fantastic players in that side. So he's left the club. He's headed up to Queensland, signed with the Falcons to play there. So a bit of a nursery for the Melbourne Storm there. It's not a bad place to be.
Very smart signing.
It's a fantastic signing. I think he's got so much ability. He can play off the cuff and play really structured. He's just got so much. He's definitely someone, you wouldn't be throwing him into the starting halfback role of a new franchise. You wouldn't do that to any young rookie, but someone that you could get for nothing because they want an opportunity. I think he has so much ability. You mentioned players like Liam Ison. I think he's going to be an absolute gun. I'd still probably target Fletcher Sharp, but maybe I'm a bit biased towards Fletcher Sharp if I'm targeting a fullback for a new franchise. But there are so many young players. The Warriors especially, with Jacob Laban, Sivakula, I've forgotten his name, the front row, Zion. There's so many players there, and you keep forgetting that this Warriors pack is already fantastic, and they just signed James Fisher-Harris. These young guys, so much talent in the world, but can they get them all into the squad? I'm not sure how it all works. I think there's so much talent there. There's so much talent in any of the Pacific Island nations. If you're building forwards, you want to try and go there.
Yeah, mate, like obviously I have, because of my brother playing Jersey Flag and whatnot, I've watched a lot of the Roosters. Blake Steep looks to be one to me that I really look to lock up. He just looks like Boyd Cordner to me. I remember when I was coming through like playing junior footy and whatnot, like Boyd Cordner was the kid that was coming down from Old Bar, I think it was, and they were driving him down every weekend, and he was an absolute freak, and then you found out he was 2 years younger than all of us. It was just crazy. Blake Steep just reminds me of that. He's a good kid. He's a leader. You've obviously got in those teams as well. You've got Feketi and the Va'a brothers, who I really, really like them. Seve at Canterbury is another one that I think's got a big future as well. So plenty of forwards around. I think it's hard with forwards nowadays, mate, and like you well and truly know this, that they play SG ball, they play Jersey Flag, and you don't know how they're going to react until they're versing men. And that's the hardest thing. Most of these guys I've seen play New South Wales Cup, like I've seen Blake Steep. I was there. I was actually in Auckland watching the Jersey Flag, and Blake Steep played after New South Wales Cup. It was his third game ever. And he came off the field and his jaw, like he looked like Sam Burgess after that. I was like, oh, that sucks. His season's over. 3 weeks later, he made his first grade debut.
Far out.
Like, he's just tough as nails, Blake Steep. He's a guy that I think, like, if I was bringing in a new franchise, he'd be one of my first targets. I think you build with him and Max Plath as not your captains when they come in, but they're your leaders in 5 years. Similar to what the Dolphins have essentially done with Max Plath now. I reckon those two would be great gets.
And he's another one blocked by that just insane Roosters depth there as well. So definitely another one there. A man that I wanted to mention, Kurt DeLewis. Now, he's a bit older. I think he's around that 26, 27 now. Made his debut with Manly, I think it was a couple seasons ago. Hasn't fully kicked on in the NRL, but in New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup level, he has been unreal. I think he was the captain of the grand final winning side this year. He's unreal. Believe he is also a Perth boy. So if you were to make a Perth franchise, definitely someone I'd look at is your players like that. It doesn't have to be these young guys. You can find these experienced heads that want to go in the New South Wales Cup, in the Queensland Cup, and I think Kurt DeLewis, he's one of those that I'd be looking to just bring onto your bench and bring him back home and definitely make a face of the franchise. I love the work that he was doing in the lower grades this year. So there's a lot of players there as well. Mate,
he's a cracking example of he just needs the right coach to come along.
Mm-hmm.
A really good example of that when I look at the Dolphins is Connolly Lemuelu.
Yes.
Watched him play reserve grade. He was playing wing, centre, second row, do it all. I'm going, fuck, this kid would be so handy to have in a system. He arrives there, he leaves the Cowboys, arrives at the Dolphins, and now he's like an automatic in first grade every week. And he's not like a world beater or anything, but he's a solid week-to-week first grader who just needed the right coach to come along.
I mean, he moved Felice Kaufusi and Kenny Bromwich out of those second row positions. That's how good Connolly was. And it says a lot. And to identify that, again, he's another one, as you mentioned. You saw him around at the Cowboys, just sort of teeter-tottering away. And yeah, I didn't really expect him to kick on the way he has, but that's what Wayne Bennett can get out of you. And I think Kurt DeLewis would be one of those sort of players. Mate, we'll move on from the younger players. Who's a few experienced heads that you would look to target for your side, similar to what Wayne Bennett did with the Bromwich brothers, with Felice Kaufusi? Who are some of them? Mark Nichols, another one that comes to mind. Who would you target nowadays?
So you're obviously looking probably 2 to 3 years down the track.
Mm-hmm.
Like your players now that are 32, 33, they sort of get ruled out. I think you're looking at your players that are sort of 28 to 30 at the moment. So some of the guys that I sort of looked at, and you know what, even for a first year, I'd be happy to sign a guy that's 33, 34 for that first season. So I'm not sure his exact age right now, but geez, I think a Tyson Frizzell would be a really good forward to start a franchise around, build around. Guys like Jake Trbojevic, I think he'd be sensational just to have as your. I think you need guys that are going to set standards. Like everyone talks about the 80 minutes on the weekend, but it's the Monday to Friday where you win and lose games.
That's
realistically. Gerbo to sort of set standards. I look at even he's a little bit younger, but in 3 or 4 years, I have a bit more experience than him. Like my boy, Jermaine Hopgood, I think he'd be a great little get to bring into a club. Pat Carrigan, be a tremendous one. And these guys aren't super older, but because of rep football and all that, they'll be really experienced. Mitch Barnett's one that I'd love to bring into a system. I think he'd be great.
You can't poach him from us. No, I'm not having it.
Yeah, fair. Liam Martin would be a good one too.
Yes.
I just think just a tough guy that, you know what, you could bring him in and he's got a bit of a lunatic, but he'd set your standards. You probably don't have to pay $1 million for Liam Martin either, but he'd do that job that you need. If I was starting a club right now, I'd be happy to bring like a Ben Hunt in.
Yeah.
Start a new franchise with. I think he'd be good. Appy Robson sort of comes to mind. I reckon another one in a few years' time, whether he wants to leave or not, and you probably won't like this, but RTS.
Yeah, 100%.
Is just an experienced guy. I just think he's a good leader. He can cover a few positions. We'll just play wherever you need him to. But yeah, if I was starting a franchise in a few years' time, Tyson Frizzell is one guy I'd love to get into my system. I just love everything about Tyson.
He's a fantastic player. As you said, it's your Monday to Friday before the games that a game is won and lost, and the standards that he sets, just hearing them across every club he's been at. The Dragons were livid when they lost him to Newcastle, and that says so much about a player. He would be unreal to get to a new franchise. He'd be one of the first names you'd look at. Very similar. I think Felice Kaufusi was the first Dolphins signing. If Tyson Frizzell could be the first signing for a new franchise, you've set yourself up so well just off one signing on the back of that. I think there's another few names that sort of spring to mind. You mentioned Pat Carrigan. Of course, when we're looking at franchises, these experienced heads are 3-4 years down the track. So Paddy Carrigan by then is pushing your 29, 30 years old. He is your experienced head. I mean, right now he's already a leader.
Yep.
It all sort of depends on where these clubs are placed. You mentioned Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Will he want to leave New Zealand? Maybe if it's a Pacific Islands team, maybe not to go to Perth. It all sort of depends. So we're just spitballing names out there, but just players that you'd love to see at other clubs to just bring that leadership. And when you say that, you've got to target the best teams in the world and the best players in the world. So, of course, that's what Wayne Bennett did by bringing those Bromwich brothers over. Yep. Could you go back to Christian Welch, seemingly out of favour with the Melbourne Storm at the moment? I still think Christian Welch has got a lot to give, even if it's not on the field, even if it is just a 20-minute spell on the field. I think the leadership, he was the captain of the Melbourne Storm last year, and that says a lot about him as a player. He's someone that I'd like to look at to bring standards across to your team. We forget that he is a Queensland rep. He's won premierships. He's captained one of the best clubs in the modern game. So players like him, I think, would be fantastic to look at. Josh Papali'i, if he's got 1 or 2 more years, if you can manage to steal him from Canberra for a year, just players like that where you don't need him for too long. If anybody watched the documentary that they did on the Dolphins, Wayne Bennett, when he's making these signings, they were trying to sort of convince him out of signing Jesse Bromwich on a 3-year deal or whatever it was because he's so old. And he said, mate, if he's playing 20 minutes, if he's not even playing by the final year of his deal, it's what he's bringing off the field that really sets his club off, and I need him for that. So we're going to offer him more than maybe his worth.
Yeah.
Those are the players you need to find. So, yeah, players like Josh Papali'i, players like Christian Welch, those are the sort of players I'd be looking at in your forward pack. Mate, moving on from sort of the older heads, we'll throw in marquee signings. Now, the Dolphins have shown us you don't need a marquee signing. Well, maybe you do, but what we thought was a marquee signing at the time really just flew under the radar.
Yep.
Hamaso ended up being their marquee man. He ended up being the face of this franchise, and he's turned into an absolute superstar. Now, the easy answer here is you say you're Nathan Cleary, you say you're Payne Haas's, but if you thought there was someone that maybe you could get, Cameron Munster at the time, the Dolphins thought they could get, who's just a player, a marquee man, doesn't have to be right at the tippy top, but a fantastic player that you'd look to just bring over and be the star player of your side.
Well, when I look at it in 2 or 3 years' time, guys that I genuinely think you could get, as you said, Nathan Cleary, okay, sweet. He's like, it's probably not going to happen, realistically. Guys that I think you could maybe go for, I don't know how it all plays out at Parramatta, but Mitch Moses, he'd be one that I think that if you offered Mitch the right money, the opportunity, and just depending on what he's achieved in his career by that point, I think he's one that you could maybe pull away from Parramatta. I don't think you're going to pull Nathan away from Penrith, realistically. I think from the Cowboys, and this would be from an entertainment point of view, like Scott Drinkwater.
Yeah, love it.
I think he'd be a great guy to target. I think that, he's obviously... he's a New South Welshman. I think he's from Central Coast. He's down in Melbourne, up in North Queensland. They love him up there 100%. But I don't feel like Drinky is the same to the Cowboys as what like Nath is to the Panthers sort of thing. So I think he's a guy you could go for. I'll tell you what I do think would be really interesting. And let's say in 3 years' time you're coming in. I think that with these franchises, you want to get as much attention on them as you possibly can. I would love to see one of these new franchises be the ones to bring Suaalii back.
Yeah, wouldn't that be insane?
I just think the storyline would be sensational just to watch how it all plays out. I'm very confident the kid's going to be a star. If you were to bring, and I don't like talking about it, but if you look at what the AFL did when they brought in their new teams like Carmichael and Israel, those guys it's a bit how you going, whatever. But I watched AFL for the first time ever. It gets the interest there, and I just think Suaalii's been such a big storyline, and whether he's successful or he's a complete flop in Union, I don't even know if it matters that much. He'll be a talking point. Bringing him back would be interesting. Reece Walsh, I think, is the biggest one though.
That's it.
And without knowing what goes on with Michael Maguire and the Broncos and whatnot, this has got the potential to go belly up. Let's be fucking honest here. Everyone's trying to ignore that. It's got the potential to. And I think bringing a superstar like Reece Walsh, and people get annoyed when you talk about Reece Walsh, blah, 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 but just seeing him over there, seeing him in Australia, but seeing him in Las Vegas, just how much of a star he is and how he just attracts eyes everywhere he goes. And you watch him play, when he's at his best. Hard to top what Reece Walsh is doing. And it's not like he's beating up on the bottom teams in the NRL. He's gone to Origin and done it. He's done it on big stages. I reckon he'd be a fantastic get. The other one that I think would be interesting, and I don't think South would ever let him go, but he's not he's a star, but he's not like one of those, halfback 5'8" sort of guys like a Cam Murray. I reckon he'd be a fantastic marquee player, but I can't see the Rabbitohs ever letting go of Cam Murray. Sam Walker would be interesting.
Sam Walker, if he has that been announced that he's just re-signed with the...
Re-signed for 2 years.
2 years. Puts him in perfect stead for it.
With all due respect to Sam Walker, it's the Roosters. If they haven't won a comp by that point, they'll move off you.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a great guy to start a new franchise with. He's an exciting fella. Everyone enjoys watching him play. I think he'd be great. And even you might find in 2 years' time, they might be older or whatever, but just one of the, a Cam Munster. Or Jerome Pierce, one of those guys. Yes, they're playing for the Melbourne Storm. They're Melbourne Storm guys through and through, but they're not born and bred in Melbourne. If there's a bit of dollar on offer for the last year or two of their career, I can see them making a move. They've both considered it in the past. Even Ryan Pappenhausen's having a look at his options right now. So I think if you were to start a new franchise, and he might not be as good as what he is, now, but a Cam Munster. just the aura and the confidence the guy has, I just think that'd be unreal to start a franchise with, even if it's only for 1 or 2 years.
Mate, you mentioned a few of the names that I wanted to say. Reece Walsh, top of the list for me. I think whether you like him or not, if he stays out of trouble, I think he's the face of the game. He's such a marketable player. He's got the pretty boy looks. He can appeal to the women's side of the game, but as a player, he is so exciting to watch. You can't not watch a Brisbane game, no matter where they are on the ladder, just because of how good he is. And if you can get him over. Another one that you didn't mention, Kalen Ponga.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if he wants to win a premiership, is he going to do that with the Knights? I'm not really sure. I don't want to, get on the Knights fans' nerves, but he'd be another one. Also, if you were a new Queensland club, bringing him back to Queensland would be a fantastic get. Cameron Murray, as you said, probably not going to leave the South Sydney Rabbitohs, but if you could somehow find a way to bring him over, he ticks all the boxes. That leadership, he's a pretty face, so he's already the face of your franchise there. But God, just everything that he brings off the field would be unreal. Jerome Hughes, you also mentioned, another one that was on my list. There were whispers about him earlier this year, whether he wanted to come back to Queensland. He shut them down and whatnot, but where there's smoke, this sort of fire, whether it's a Queensland new franchise or it's in Perth, he's already achieved everything. He's now just ticked off a Dally M. He's won a premiership. There's nothing really left for Jerome Hughes to achieve in rugby league. Why not go to a new franchise for the last couple of years, get them up and running? If it's under a Craig Bellamy, maybe there's the pool there. Even if it's a Wayne Bennett, you can almost get anyone you want there. Jerome Hughes is another man that I'd love. But as you said, your Nathan Clearys and whatnot, they're the easy answer. You're not really going to dislodge him from the Penrith Panthers unless Ivan wants a new challenge and they both go somewhere else. Hopefully back to the Warriors and do some unfinished business there. I wouldn't hate that. But it's sort of those players like Kalen Pongers who maybe want to win a premiership or maybe want to just take their game to another level under a Wayne Bennett. All those players like Jerome Hughes that want to go, they've ticked every box. Let's just do this last challenge.
Probably the last one that I'd throw in, and once again, I don't think you'd be able to make it work, but as far as starting a franchise, like if you could just get Jake and Tom Trbojevic, you have your star fullback, you have the leader in the pack, you have two brothers, two guys that are incredibly popular in our game, two guys that you're going to get no off-field drama. You might get a couple of injuries with Tom, that's the risk you take, but as far as starting a franchise, to have two brothers come over like that, and I think it'd also like at the end of the day, people hate Manly. People would love to see that as well. It would be a very good storyline. Obviously DC is going to retire in a couple of years. I imagine Manly lock up Tom and Jake forever, and Tom and Jake probably don't want to leave too. But as far as the optics of, two perfect guys you could cover a forward pack and you strike outside back, your marquee, that'd be pretty perfect.
That's it. The last guy I'll mention as well, mate, if this is purely off the optics, if we're getting a country rugby league footy side in New South Wales or Queensland, I'd love to see a Latrell Mitchell go back there. We know his country roots. He loves that. Gets him out of the spotlight of Sydney. I think it'd be the perfect face of a franchise if he was to move back to a country rugby league side. But again, all this comes down to where the new team is going to be or where the teams after that are going to be. So it's all up in the air in the moment. We're no closer to having an answer, but I'm excited for the future of it. Mate, have you got anything else to add to this?
No, I think we're covered, mate. I think we're good as gold. We've actually got a bit of construction next door, so shout out if you've heard any of that. It's great for podcasting.
Oh, it always makes it fun, doesn't it?
It's great for me. Unreal. Love that. Great timing.
Well, that one will do us then. So thank you guys for tuning in. Guru, Kat, thank you very much for being here and being in the presence of this podcast and making this a reality for me. It's such a pleasure to be in the presence of absolute greatness in the rugby league content space from the both of you. So deepest thanks to both of you. This one will be the last podcast for the Chip and Chase podcast for the year. We're going to take a few weeks off. As I said, just going to take in the Pacific Championships and just really soak them up as a fan. And we'll be back in the next season with a lot more plans and getting into our previews and whatnot, heading into probably around January next year. So thank you guys for tuning into this one. Guru, mate, any parting words?
No, thanks for having me on, mate. Unreal to have you down, and well done on everything you're doing, mate. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and people don't realise that when they're listening and watching, but it takes a lot, mate, so full credit to you.
Thanks very much, mate. So you know what they say, it's been real, it's been fun, but it ain't been real fun.
Thank you.